Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome back once again to the Virtual House Church. My name is Juan Carlos. It's a blessing to be once again in this week in order to study the Word of Yahuwah as we have been doing week by week, Shabbat after Shabbat. And, as I always have been telling you, for me, it's a blessing to be here with you. And I hope all these studies that we are doing in Virtual House Church are also a blessing to your own walk in order to grow in knowledge, in order to grow in the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah. That's the whole purpose of Virtual House Church. So, I think, as I have been telling you as well, every time that we are going through the studies of the different portions we have in this new cycle, is interesting to see how everything is correlated to what's going on in the world today. It's always come to my mind what is written by the words of Solomon, is that there's nothing new under the sun. And everything that happened in the past will happen again. And this is exactly what we see going on in the world today. And especially, in the portion that we will study today, we will see a lot of foreshadows of things that happened in the past that somehow are reflecting the reality we are living today. And that's the beauty and the important and the truth of the word of Yahuwah that is helping us, no matter the time that we're living, we can apply it directly to our own lives. So, especially in these days that there are so many crazy things happening in the world. We can now speak that direct here in this platform because there's a lot of censorship going on. But just to tell you a few things that sometimes in other countries are wondering what's going on, and they're really amazed at what's going on. I can tell you here in my country, there is already a fourth rotation of this thing that they are pushing the people to take. That if they're not taking this fourth thing, the famous passport is going to be invalid. And this is already happening in my country starting a few weeks ago. And they're already talking about the fifth rotation of this thing that will come in the future. And I have been hearing some news that what's going on in Europe and also in the US. Most of you are coming and joining us from the US. That this is still not implemented in this way. But I can tell you, brothers and sisters, this is what is being implemented, somehow orchestrated. This is what's going on all over the world. And as I have been telling you, without going into the details, it should not be a surprise to all of us. It should not be a surprise because we know that this is what needs to happen in these last days. And we cannot take positions from any of the groups. We have been discussing and sharing and also seeing in the different portions that we see two groups happening today in these days. We need to be in the middle because we are not part of the world. We need to be part of the system of the kingdom of Yahuwah, and we need to observe everything that's happening. And that needs to be our position, no matter the different strong winds and storms that are coming ahead. We need to be and stay strong in the rock that is our Elohim. So why I'm sharing you this? Because it's important that we need to be ahad, we need to be united, putting our eyes to the destiny, to the north, that is the kingdom of Yahuwah, that soon will be established here on earth by the hand of Yahushua HaMashiach. And through the different storms and the different trials that we are going through, and most probably will go through, is more important than ever. And we will discuss this a bit in the portion of today, that we need to grow strong and stronger. We need to develop our character, imitating Mashiach. That's the only way that we are going to endure until the end. But, I'm going to reserve more points to the coming portion. I have Jake is with us. I will bring him in just a minute to share with us what he has about this portion. But before to continue, as we always do, just to invite you to visit the Virtual House Church website. I'm not going to get tired to repeat this week by week because we need to remember that this was a project that started by a beloved brother Rob Skiva. And he put a lot of effort in order to put this project in place. And he was collecting so much important information in this website. And he initiated this virtual house church back in 2012 with his wife. And, in a way of honored what Rob did, it's important that we go through this site. And I can tell you, I myself have not go through the entire site. And I have to do it because, I know that there is a lot of important information collected throughout the years. I was while we were praying this morning with my wife, I was remembering that it's been already 10 years since I started to walk this walk. Yahuwah awakened me to his truth. I started to open my eyes back on 2012. And, it's amazing to see how the journey has been so far, and how fast time has go through. And, I think a virtual house church for me, and most probably for most of you as well, has been a fundamental piece of my walk. Having the chance to connect with each other virtually, to know that there are more people, brothers and sisters out there in the four corners of the earth, that they believes in the same way that I believe, that Yahuwah has been awakening them in the same way that he has awakened me. And throughout these years, to be able to join ourselves through the virtual house church to study his word has been an amazing blessing. And, I think we need to share this blessing with others. That's I think the most important takeaway from me on what we have been doing in Virtual House Church. And beside that, and that the important point is to share the truth of Yahuwah, a way to honor what Rob also did, because Yahuwah put in his heart to start this project, is to share this with others and also to study the content of this site. So I will invite you once again to go and visit Virtual House Church. Share this information with others. And, the most important thing that we need to do in these times, beside crying out to Yahuwah to help us, to fight the battle for us, is study his word. The only way that we are going to develop our character, the only way that we are going to discern the time that we are living, is to go deeper and deeper into his word, and to ask Abba to give us the wisdom and to let the Ruach HaKodesh to speak out to our heart in order to understand what Yahuwah wants to teach us. I can tell you, throughout these 10 years, Yahuwah has been teaching me so much things. And I know that what I know is this minimum to what he wants to reveal to us. And what it matters is for you and me to seek his face, to seek with all our heart the wisdom of Yahuwah and his truth. And he will reveal even more than he has been revealing to us throughout all these years. So, brothers and sisters, stop speaking for the time. I will speak a lot in this portion. So, I want to share with you a song, and then we will start, and then we will bring Jake to the screen. So, here we go.
דום נכוחה
What a beautiful song, you know. This needs to be our attitude. Is that we need to tell Yahuwah that here I am to serve you. No matter the difficulties we're going through, no matter what's going on in our own lives, no matter what's going on around us, our attitude needs to be to serve Him and to tell Him, here I am, Yahuwah, to serve you. So with this spirit, I will invite you to close your eyes, to lift up your hands to heaven, and let's pray to Yahuwah to help us and to give us the wisdom today. So, Yahuwah Elohim, we give thanks to you in this time to give us the opportunity to gather ourselves in this new Shabbat in order to study your word. Thank you, Abba, because in your wisdom, in your compassion, and in your love, you have opened our eyes to your truth. You have strengthened our faith, our temunah. You have strengthened our conviction that you are the owner of the truth, that you are the creator, you are the only one Elohim. And we are here, Abba, with the desire in our heart to praise your name, to worship you, Abba, to study your word, to ask you, Abba, that you can continue opening our eyes, our ears, and our understanding to your truth, especially in these times of trouble. We ask you, Abba, that you can give us more wisdom, you can give us more faith, that you can give us more strength in order to endure until the end. Abba, we ask you that you can guide us in this time that we are going to study your word, that your Ruach can guide us to learn even more, that you can speak to us today. The desire of our heart, Abba, is to be prepared for what's coming, is to be prepared in order to fulfill your will, in order to fulfill the purpose you have put in our hearts to serve you with all our mind, with all our strength. Abba, we ask you for anybody that is going through difficulties in the body, that you can sustain them, that you can open the door for them to go and go out of the difficulties, that you can provide any of their needs. We ask you, Abba, that you can give us the spirit of a unity, that we can be echad in you through Mashiach. In this time, we need it more than ever. We believe in you with all our heart. We put our hope in you, Abba, in these times, and we praise your name every day of our lives. Thank you, Abba. We pray in this name, in this moment, in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen. So it's time to start. So let me bring Jake to the screen. Jake, brother, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Juan. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, brother, as I said a few minutes ago, I was studying this portion, and now we're starting to see the different rulers, the different judges appearing into the scene. And we're starting with the cycle of Israel going astray from the true way and coming back to Yahuwah in different generations. And it's amazing to see, as I said at the beginning, how much of this thing is correlated, and some of the stories are correlated to what's happening today. And for me, those are the important nuggets of what should be our attitude, what we need to develop, how we should behave in these times in order to be by the side of Yahuwah. So, brother, I'm really excited to see what you are bringing and what Yahuwah has put in your heart. So, you want to start? Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's it's great to be here. Reading through Judges 3 through 5. This is a really interesting Torah portion as we start to break away from the first and second generation Exodus people, and we start to be introduced to the third generation. This starts with after Joshua, who I would consider like second generation, right? He's the one who followed Moses and Aaron. And then Joshua had a compatriot, Caleb. They were kind of, both there at the same time. And then after Caleb, you have his, this first judge seems to come after Joshua. And this is Othniel, the son of Kenaz. And so not only him, but we get introduced to several other people. We have Deborah, the female judge we're introduced to in this Torah portion. It's really interesting. And we start off with something I wanted to talk about, which is kind of an interesting dichotomy right at the beginning of the little portion here of Judges. And it's a dichotomy between the nations that Yahuwah left behind in Israel to be a type of test, a type of kind of let's see if they still love me, if their hearts will stay with me while they enjoy the benefits of this beautiful land. And this was the five kingdoms: the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites that all remained after those initial wars. And these to me seem more like the ongoing representation of the continuation of testing that goes on in the lives of the children of the Most High. So Israel, while they succeeded, they made it into the promised land, they got out of the wilderness, they're in their home, they've finished most of the wars for the most part, for conquering their inheritance. Now we know there's large swaths of land that they were told they could have that they didn't actually go and finish the battles. But we see that these people that were left behind, according to Judges 3:4, and they were left behind to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of Yahuwah, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. And so now this is an interesting setup here. These are not Israelites. These are for the most part Gentile, pagan, kind of heathenistic nations that were surrounding them. And the way that they made the Israelites fall seemed to always be through the intermarrying of their sons and daughters together, and then the daughters would come in and turn their hearts away to then follow after these other gods. And it says in verse 6, and they took their daughters to be wives and gave daughters to their sons and served their gods. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord and forgot Yahuwah their God and served Baalim and the groves. And of course, this is all going back to that curse that we had from that false prophet. Well, he was a prophet for false god, like the evil kings, and he was like a witch, sorcerer type dude, and his name was Balaam. And Balaam, now Balaam, he basically told the king surrounding him that this is how you would get the Israelites to fall. And so we see that that's kind of the way that they were being tested. And I think that's an important point to look at, because as we find our families are growing up around us, and we're finding communities to be a part of, finding good people to be around, that we can depend on, that we can fellowship with, because that's an important concept. We have to recognize that our kids are the next generation. If they don't have somebody to connect with that are also walking this this peculiar route, this aliens in a strange land, we're here, it's not our home, but that's the significance of having somebody for your next generation to kind of connect with, to continue on what the previous generation might be starting. It only takes one generation to lose your heritage, your identity, your understanding of serving and walking after the Most High. And even today, this reflects what position people are in now. I mean, the cultural war against the next generation is so intense. It is all designed to basically emasculate. It's designed to destroy the family structure, to destroy the home, to sexualize people at a very young age, to go through all these different things to kind of take you away from a biblical heritage, a biblical identity that would come through following God's commandments, to following Yahuwah and keeping his Torah. Is what we come to learn is how they would stay away from evil. And then we see regularly, starting here with the judges, that the Israelites start to swing back and forth between doing what was evil in the sight of Yahuwah and doing what was right in their own eyes, which is both, one seems better than the other, but they're both a path to destruction, because whenever they rejected the Torah, the commandments of the Most High, even if they were doing what was right, what they thought was good, they often brought a curse upon themselves. And that's where we get the other side of the dichotomy that I was trying to break down here. Is you had the five kingdoms, the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 6 kingdoms, right? And they were there to prove Israel. And they are juxtaposed to a different type of kingdom, an imperial kingdom, a kingdom ruled from Mesopotamia. And I don't know if you guys, in Mesopotamia, you can see here, I got a picture up for you. Mesopotamia is pretty much the land of Babylon. It's the land of Ur. This is where Nimrod, the first king who had the Tower of Babel, somewhere down here, the Tower of Babel supposedly was built in the land of Ur. And we have a subsidiary of that kingdom, that Babylonian kingdom, where Nimrod ruled over once, and then eventually we know Abraham left Babylon. But the significance of this kingdom, this different kingdom than the one that was living there in Canaan, the sons of the Canaanites, this kingdom is a kingdom that is used for judgment. And it has some really interesting parallels with kind of the modern Babylonian system, so to speak, and how that is used as judgment throughout history in a recurring system. It's not one of the nations that tests you. It's not one of the nations that were kept around about to be a thorn in your side so that you continue to depend on the Most High. Instead, this is the kind of kingdom that the Most High would bring in when you were full on rebellious, when you were full on rejecting his commandments, rejecting his ways. And we get the first understanding of how this kingdom ties to more of like a book of Revelations in times, understanding of judgment. And the name of the king that we see here, and it's given in verse 8, and it says that therefore the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the land of Cush-Arishaithaim, king of Mesopotamia, and the children of Israel served Cush-Arishaithaim 8 years. Now say that 500 times fast, or no, 3 times fast. 500 times is a little much for that word. But the reason I wanted to, focus in on this name here is because it reveals an identity and a characteristic of this ruler of Mesopotamia, this ruler over the kingdom where Babylon is. And we can click over here, and the first part of Cushan-Rishathaim is Cushan, a reference to Cush, the sons of Cush, who built Babylon. And we can see that here, Cushan-Rishathaim is a twice wicked Cushan. So the king of Mesopotamia is a man who's from Cush and is very wicked, apparently. We can see the specific word breakdown, Cushan and Risha, which Rasha is wickedness. And I wanted to mention this because it's always interesting to get into word studies. And Risha or Rasha, which is goes to the word wickedness in Hebrew, has an interesting pictographic meaning that I learned a while back, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it's tied to what brought the Israelites into captivity under this king of Mesopotamia. And so, did you know that the word Rasha, in a possible pictographic interpretation, each letter, of course, we know there's a saying that each Hebrew letter has 7 meanings, and that means each Hebrew word has 70 meanings. So you take it or leave it. It is one of the possible understandings of this beautiful language that's very, very intricate and has multiple layers to it. But one of the possible meanings of Rasha, after that caveat, right, is he who lacks the strength to overcome.
Wow.
And he who lacks the strength to overcome. And breaking that down and how wickedness is tied to this actually a kind of an applicable statement, right? If you lack the strength to overcome the shortcomings in your life, the faults that you have, um, then that is what the definition of wickedness is, because it shows you the areas that you are lackadaisical in. It shows you the areas that you're
Yeah.
not willing to overcome. It shows you where you're lukewarm in, and I think we all have areas that, sometimes we might say, oh well, that sin's too hard to deal with, or that temptation's too hard to not give into, right? And I think that's where we trick ourselves, we fool ourselves into lessening the severity and the seriousness of sin in our life. And sin is transgression of the Torah, 1 John 3:4. And it's why we study the scriptures, is because to be more like our Messiah, to follow his example. He was blameless. He kept his father's commandments perfectly, and to look more like him, and to apply how he walked out the commandments, and to kind of emulate him, because the sincerest form of flattery is imitation, right?
Yeah.
Well, we should try to not be wicked, right? Because he was the opposite of wicked. He was righteous, and also not just to look more like our Messiah, and to bring it back to our context of Judges and the people. Whenever they were wicked, they were judged, and it says over and over several times here, um, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and Yahuwah strengthened then another king, King Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of Yahuwah. And so it's jumping from king to king, and of course, I'm jumping ahead of myself because I wanted to talk about Othniel and the significance of these roles of the judges, and how it's really interesting, and it's tied to kind of the modern um, job title of a believer in today's world. If you think
Mm-hmm.
about the role of the judges and how they operated in Israel, and how that is a foreshadow and a type of the situational kind of responsibilities of a believer in today's world. It's the people that stand up and stand for the Most High,
Mm-hmm.
in the face of complete wickedness around them. Their friends, their families are all going into the groves, getting freaky with the hippies out there in the woods. All the people worshiping false gods. These things were going on, and a person had the spirit of the Most High put upon them, and he started standing up for what was right. And this is a great kind of archetype for the rest of the judges going forward, who would have these spurts and these moments of just righteous zeal. And this follows after kind of that template that we see with Phineas, who was so zealous for righteousness that he speared through the wicked people practicing basically defiling the holy place of the Most High. So not to get too far ahead of myself, back to Othniel and the role of these judges, and how it's tied to kind of what we should start to emulate in terms of standing up for righteousness in the world that we live in, is you know whenever we live in a nation or a place that's being judged, it's oftentimes that judgment that turns people's hearts to be hardened and to close themselves off and to blame the Most High. And it's, however, the repentant, it's the people that recognize that they're bringing those judgments onto themselves, that can then turn and repent, and then seek forgiveness from the Most High. But at the same time, when hard times come, you really do find out what you're made of. You find out, do you really worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Do you really, seek after, him? And so, we just learned. The next thing I kind of looked into here, I know I'm kind of getting a little ramblish here. Let's get back on topic. Sorry, one.
No, but
Um,
it's a good one, Jake. Everything that you have shared so far is so interesting. And, as always, it's happening. This is totally correlated to some of the thoughts that I came to my mind as well. But please go ahead.
Awesome. The next focus for me was, of course, the next judge that we have stand up, and of course, I think it's one significant that we see that these people were coming from various tribes of Israel, and I
Yeah.
think that's one of the focuses on the role of judges and its correlation with believers in today's world and the people that should stand up for righteousness in a time of lawlessness, which is what the end times is characterized as. And it's also the time that this time was characterized as. And these people were being handpicked from various tribes. They weren't blood. It wasn't seemingly a bloodline thing for these judge figures. Although we do see, that, there seems to be some interesting, relation with some of these people. But my
Mhm.
point being is that they weren't priests, they weren't kings, they were judges, and they didn't have to have some pedigree tethering them to Judah or to Levi to be a priest, for example. And that's kind of what I want to break down, is that these men, these judges, and Deborah, for example, who would stand up also in our portion, they were from a wide swath of identities and backgrounds. Um, just like believers are, just like people who start to want to follow after the commandments of the Most High, and to walk like the Messiah with his testimony. And all right, so I always think it's interesting, the bit story of the Benjamite, right? The Benjamite judge who
Yeah.
killed the king. I wanted to pull up something here that's interesting, and so what do we know about this judge? Um, and so Ehud made him a dagger which had two edges of a cubit length, and he girt it under his raiments upon his right thigh. Um,
Mhm.
and I learned once from a teacher that the reason it was significant, it says he girded on his right thigh, is because most people who were right-handed warriors would gird their swords on their left leg,
Left.
because with your right leg you can reach down and grab it. It's a little harder to get on the inside of your thigh on your same side. So you
Mhm.
you oppositely gird it, and so whenever he would have been going into the presence of this king, they would have searched his other side, and so that's how he
Mhm.
evaded detection. But there's a significance to Benjamin and left-handedness. We find that Benjamin is the one tribe throughout the scriptures that is associated with left-handed warriors, and there's a kind of a symbolic meaning to left-handedness. And just for those of you who didn't finish reading through Judges here and aren't familiar with the story, of course our judge Ehud, who's the left-handed Benjamite, goes into the evil king Eglon, and he stabs him. The king's so fat that the fat covers up the knife, and he escapes, and therefore he rids this terrible king, the land of the terrible king. And so the significant kind of narrative device associated with left-handedness is, it's significant because the left side of the body is often associated with deception or darkness. And it's a tactical advantage in war against the majority, who are often right-handed, because you catch them off guard, and it's symbolic for being outside of the culturally accepted norm, or as a leader, he went outside of the usual way things kind of go. All right, so got the interesting story of the judge King Eglon, and the death of that fat guy with the judge. And
Yeah, it's unbelievable, the details of the story. It's for me, it's amazing.
yeah, I can't understand how a production company out there, and if you are out there and you're tuning into us, hire me. I'd love to work on a project like this, but basically somebody to make a film or a movie like about these stories. They're so
Yeah.
intense, and there's so much trash out there on movies and TV already, so violent.
Mhm.
um it's just interesting, like, to show the stories as they were would really draw in a larger audience into a biblical narrative, I think.
That would be amazing, and the coming story is the same, with all those details. It's amazing. It could be interesting to see it visually.
Yes, yeah. And just last thought here. It was regarding chapter 4 and Deborah, and then I'll pass it over to you, Juan, and I'm sure you have some great insights.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Jake. No. I just wanted to complement a few things, but please continue. Finish your thoughts, and after that, I can comment in just to complement some of them.
Yeah, I just had one last little thing to tack on here, and the next judge that we have come along in the story is this woman Deborah, and she's a woman that's propped up in a position of authority and leadership because it seems like the men aren't willing to stand up.
Yeah.
And before we comment on that, I wanted to read Isaiah 3 verse 12, and it's a judgment. It's a in context. It's a judgment against Judah for being wicked. And one of the judgments it mentions is this whole aspect of being ruled over by women. It seems to be a consequence that is associated with the curses in Deuteronomy, where the men are so effeminized and so spineless that your ladies start standing up. And it says, starting in verse 11, woe to the wicked, disaster is upon them, for they will be repaid with what their hands have done. Youth suppress my people, and women roll over them. Oh, my people, your guides mislead you, and they turn you from your paths. And so I read that in Isaiah 3:12, and I know that's in context of when Isaiah was written afterwards, but the premise is still the same. And this same story, it starts off, and the children of Israel did evil in the sight of Yahuwah when he was dead. And what do we see is this, a natural consequence of doing wickedly and doing evil? Well, we see that young people, not wise people, associate kind of the word youth with foolish and unexperienced, start to rule over the nation, rule over the people. And also women have to step up, and take this role that the men obviously aren't filling. And that's what we see with Deborah here. Deborah, the prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, and she judged Israel. So the reason I wanted to mention that and associate it with kind of what we see in today's world is, over the past 10 years or so, we see a rise of influencers who are very young, who are starting to try to lead our country, our nation, and we see kind of like a parallel that I'm trying to make here with some of these judgments that happen in the past and some of the things that happen in today's world. So we have these young people being propped up on the world stage as leaders. So a great example, just recently, in the past 2-3 years, Greta Thunberg with the agenda to push, various, climate change, legislation through, trying to push through, the more political side of control, give over your rights in order for this person to come in, and that figure, that young person, was used to prop up an agenda. And we have several other people in recent history, young high school kids being used to push gun control agendas. We have a variety of social media influencers who are all very young, under 30 years old, so to speak, and they have some of the most popular podcast videos of all time in recorded history. These people are being viewed and digested more so than any other media other than like the Bible, and I think they're trying to catch up to that, right? And the significance of this is we see that our society and the state that it's in is following a pattern set up in the scriptures. And it's why we study this stuff. It's why we see where they failed so that we can learn from their mistake. And so just wanted to point some of those things out to you guys. And, and then of course we have some crazy stories, through the rest of the chapter 4 and 5, some some pretty gruesome violent scenes, but it just shows kind of the nitty gritty start of Israel, but it also shows us that an interesting characteristic of how the Most High wanted the nation to be in the first place, because we see that he warns them when they ask for a king that he could be their king at this time. And the way that he was going about it was he was kind of like leading them through these judges, these people that were being filled with his spirit. And then of course the people beg for a king. And it's interesting that the way that he sets up the nation, he doesn't start with a king. He starts with judges, one. And maybe you have some comments as to the significance of that, maybe tying back to my first initial thoughts of how the judges parallel the role of believers in today's world, and how why is it that Israel as a nation was set up and had judges ruling over it instead of the traditional king system, and it didn't go straight into the monarchical system we see later on with David.
Yeah, that's the model that for me is really interesting, Jake. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the past, but I see a plan from Yahuwah to restore everything from to the very beginning. I think the only fact that the model changed from rulers to kings is for Yahuwah to take control as the rightful king, as it was at the beginning. And we can go deeper in this study in our time. But it's interesting because at the end, he's going to be king over all the earth through Yahushua HaMashiach. And I think somehow the rulers are going to be, as you properly said in a minute ago, we are somehow a kind of rulers today. That's why he was saying to the disciples that they are going to judge the tribes of Israel. And we are going to judge the world together with Mashiach. So I think this model is very interesting. I was talking to my daughter a few weeks ago about that when we see politics going on in the world today, we see different type of models, and some are very bad, others are not that bad, and so on. I was asking her what's the model of the scripture, and then you go into the details. You can talk about the monarchy, you can talk about capitalism in some way. You can see many models working all together in harmony, and that's the beauty of scripture. So it's a tribal way of living as well in the scripture, with the 12 tribes, with the heads of the tribes, the judges, the king, and so on. So for me, it's something very interesting topic to study. So
yeah, very interesting.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh no, I'm just I think just the transition from the two styles of government, from the judges to the kingdom, is so interesting, and it's almost like a foreshadow for the transition from this time period right before the coming of the king. Is kind of what I wanted to kind of expound on. Is we're in a time of the judges right now, if you think about it, kind of where people are doing what's right in their own eyes, and you have people stand up here and there who stand for the word of the Most High, but you have the generations just being kind of churned through with all the wickedness and idolatry, and then the kingdom comes, following the judge period. So just it's actually, just an interesting thought.
Yeah, actually, Jake, the other day, I think it's totally relevant to what we are seeing here in this portion. I was taking a look in some news that was a Christian that posted a video saying that there is some statistics of a survey that was done, I think, a few months ago, that around 20,000 pastors are resigning to their positions. They are not going to continue in those positions, and I think the number is increasing to 50,000 around the world. And it caught my attention because I really hope that those people are taking a different way because they have been awakened by Yahuwah to the true path. That in Christianity we know is not completely the path, is half of it. And I came from Christianity. I think most of us came from Christianity, and we know what I'm talking about. But if that's not the case, and if the decision they're making is not because they have been awakened to the truth, it's very alarming, because basically it's people going back and turning back from the way of Yahuwah, at least from the way that they have been walking so far. And we like it or not, the position of those persons is a leadership position, that they're guiding many people that are following them. So the impact to the flocks is gonna be really important. Why I'm bringing this to the table, Jake? Because it's exactly what you said just now. I think we are in that time today, in that time that we are missing leadership, in the time that we are missing the people that are being raised up by Yahuwah, not to save his people, because we have a savior. It's Yahushua HaMashiach, that was raised up twice, from his mother womb and from the dead. And through him we have salvation and deliverance in these times. But I think we are lacking leadership today in the people of Yahuwah in these times. And for me it was so interesting to saw it even written in this portion. And let me share the screen a bit, Jake, because when I was reading the chapter 5 of Judges, the son of Deborah and Barak, and this is in the verse 6, 7, and I think it's also 12. I have my notes here. It says, in the days of Shamgar, the son of Anad, in the days of Yael, the highways were deserted, and the travelers went in crooked ways. Leadership ceased. It ceased in Israel, until I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel arose. And it says in the 12th, wake up, Deborah, wake up, sing a song, arise, Barak, and lead your captives away, O son of Avinoam. So when I saw this, and I immediately remembered this news that I just shared about this, all these people resigning from the position in Christianity, and it touched my heart, because I saw it immediately. This is exactly as you properly said, Jake. This is what we're missing: is these leaders rising up in these times. And the leader, what it means, and I like in the way you put this, Jake, is a believer in Yahuwah. It's not one that's going to lead many people, that is going to have, is going to be in a top position, that we need to follow this person and so on, as we see it happening in these portions, because we need to follow Mashiach. All of us, we are brothers and sisters. We need to follow the teacher. We need to follow our leader is Mashiach. But anyway, we need these believers, strong believers that are rising up in these times, strong believers in the word, strong believers in faith, in order to show the world, and also to help the people of Yahuwah to continue in the right path. And I think, that leadership is missing today. And because of this leadership is missing today, many people are getting confused. Many people are going astray. And I know this is part of what needs to happen. Mashiach said about this, that many will depart from the faith. And we are seeing it in front of our eyes happening. So that's why it's more important than ever that we need to pray to Yahuwah. You know what I saw in the cycle, Jake, is that every time that Israel was facing the difficulties, how they reacted, what was their attitude, how they were saved from that difficulties, because they cried out to Yahuwah, because they remembered that Yahuwah was the only one able to save them. from their difficulties. And after they cried out to Yahuwah, Yahuwah raised up those leaders, those rulers, those shofetim. So we are living in very weird times and very difficult times. We know that the challenges will increase in the time ahead. So it's the time that we use our knees and that we cry out to Yahuwah to raise up those leaders, to raise up those believers strong in the faith, that they will help us in order to be united, will shine the light of Yahuwah in this world. And I think that's the biggest responsibility to all of us, to all the people of Yahuwah. Sometimes we relied in other people to do things, and that's a very wrong attitude. And I will show you a few things here in this portion, even that it reflects exactly that attitude. We need to be the ones that are taking actions. Taking actions, meaning that we are not gonna go the destruction, physical destruction. No, taking action is to share the good news. Taking actions in order to lead others in righteousness. Taking action in order to shine the light of Yahuwah to others. Taking actions in order not to wait for a ruler, to wait for a believer to raise up and to do that job. For sure, Yahuwah will make the decision, and for sure, Yahuwah will take and raise people in those in those positions with that purpose. But let's not wait for that to happen. We need to take action in order to pray to Yahuwah, to ask Him to raise those people, and to, as the song said, that we need to be willing to tell Yahuwah, Yahuwah, here I am, to serve you. Because if Yahuwah's will is to take us in order to be in those positions and to take that attitude in order to guide others in these times of darkness, we need to be willing to do it. So I think for me that was the most important aspect of this portion. Even when you were sharing about the purpose, and we discussed last week about this in the first portion of this book, that Yahuwah kept these nations in order to try Israel, in order to try if they were going to continue being faithful to His path, to His kingdom, to His ways. But what got my attention, and let me put the screen again here with the scriptures, is what is written in the first few verses of this chapter 3, in verse 1 and 2. And let me read it. It says, "And these are the nations which Yahuwah left, to try Israel by them," and listen to what is written here onward. "All those who had not known all the battles in Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them battle, only those who before did not know them." What I understand from this is that generation didn't know the battles. They were living in a time of peace, in a time of rest. They didn't went through the different battles that the previous generation needed to have in order to conquer the land, in order to fulfill the purpose of Yahuwah to their lives. So there is a second, in my understanding, there is a second purpose of Yahuwah keeping these nations. First purpose, and most important, is to try that generation if they were going to follow His ways. But second is to develop the proper character in them. Because, and I think this is exactly what's going on today. We were having this discussion here at home about this, is that, the current generation, most of us, we have not gone through difficulties. And let's think in the history of humankind, and also history of believers. The previous generation, part of the previous generation went through the Second World War. Even, it was the previous generation that went through those time of difficulties. But our generation, we have not gone through time of difficulties as the previous generation. We have been living in a very easy way. And I think in the scripture it says that we have been grown fat, and we have been living an easy life because and I don't want to disregard that all of us are going through difficult things. Life sometimes is difficult. We all going through trials and tests and different challenges throughout our own lives. But seeing this in a macro way, in a generational way, this generation has been going through very easy times. If we look in the same way and believers, and we compare ourselves to the first believers, even when we see the letters to the seventh assemblies in the book of Revelation, it is written in this way as well, that the first assemblies, the first generations of believers went through a lot of persecutions, went through a lot of difficulties, went through a lot of death. But our generations has received the blessing, because we need to consider this as a blessing, that we have been enjoying free of speech until 2 years ago, most probably, because this is getting a more difficult time to time. But in a general way, we have been enjoying living in this way and believing in this way in a free manner, not like not suffering persecution, not suffering that kind of challenges of those generations. So if I compare ourselves, this generation, from a believing point of view and also from a historical point of view of human mankind, this generation doesn't know battle. This generation doesn't know what it takes to endure until the end. So when I look into this in this way, Yahuwah and the things that are happening today, what Yahuwah is trying to do with us is to prepare ourselves to develop our character in order to be prepared for what's coming, in order to fulfill our role. It is written that we are going to reign together with Mashiach, that we are going to be in a management position over the nations. We're going to judge the nations. So how come we are going to judge the nations? How come we are going to lead the nations into righteousness if we have not developed the character, knowing what it takes to endure until the end? When Yahushua is saying that we need to endure until the end, it means that we need to be strong even in times of difficulties, meaning that we need to have the character and the strength in order to be in the rock no matter what's going on. And that, it's being to chisel our character especially when we go with time of difficulties. This is what I see happening in this passage, in these two verses. And for me, it's a total correlation to this generation, Jake, to this generation that has been going through easiness, to put it in this way. And just to put some verses here on the screen. And Peter, it says a lot, and let me start with Romans, because Paul also mentions something very interesting. What is the meaning of trials? Let's go to Romans chapter 5. Let's read from verse 1 to 5. Therefore, having been declared right by belief, we have peace with Elohim through our Master YaHuWaH Moshiah, through whom also we have access by belief into this favor in which we stand, and we exult in the expectation of the esteem of Elohim. And not only this, but we also exult in pressures, knowing that pressures works endurance, and endurance approvedness, and approvedness expectation. And expectation does not disappoint, because the love of Elohim has been poured out in our hearts by the set-apart Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, which has been given to us. So, trials help us to develop the character of Mashiach in us. And this needs to be our attitude. And sometimes it's so difficult. I struggle myself. I struggle a lot. You mentioned something, Jake, that touched me, because sometimes we go through so tiny things that they keep us away, and it's going through keeping our emotions and thoughts rounding and rounding our heads, and they hold us back and don't let us move ahead. And I think it's happening to all of us. I said, I think last week, that is just something is on the air that is expressing very hard in all of us. And we know that what is on the air is the wicked spirit. And that's why, we need to acknowledge first that those are wicked spirit, the spirit of the Nephilim that are doing their job in these times. That it's important to acknowledge that. And at the moment we acknowledge that if we are going through those difficulties, we need to understand that we need to cast our burden into Yahushua. Because he is going to be the one helping us to get out of those issues, to get out of those scenarios in order to move forward, to understand what is our real purpose. That's the way that he's developing his character on us in order to be prepared to shine the light of Yahuwah in this world. And there are multiple other passages, that came to my mind also the parable of the sower. We cannot be that seed in the rocky places, that when the pressure arises, we are going to be withered. Or we cannot be those one among the thorns. We need to be good soil. And to be good soil is just to be, with the right attitude and to let Yahuwah to develop that character on us in order to be, with the determination of the rulers. Being a believer with the determination of the rulers in order to do what we need to do in these times. So that's the main point from me, Jake. I don't know if you want to make some comments before I continue.
I think that's a really important verse that you pointed out there. I actually had that one highlighted in my text over here that I forgot to mention. So we are on the same page there. The significance of how one generation had learned to war and how the following generation had to be taught to learn to war, because he didn't want them to just get it easy, it seems like. And you're right. Like, we've kind of lived in a time period that's been super easy, and we've all become very fat on our pillow, so to speak. We're all lackadaisical. And I know there's certain areas of the world, it's not a broad stroke, but there's always the generation that seems to come after the warriors that gave them good times, and then the good times create weak men that create bad times, right? And I wanted to point something out in relation to that verse, and it's a pattern that we see throughout Scripture with a very significant biblical number, throughout prophecy and through a lot of different things. And so it's the number of 40 years, and the time period of like, even we see it even in this Torah portion. For example, we see it at the end of Caleb's son-in-law's reign. It says, and the land had rest 40 years, and then Othniel the son of Kenaz died, and then the children of Israel did evil on the side of the and so we also have the parallel of the 40 years in the wilderness. So you had one generation that left Egypt, that had to flee the Egyptians and fight against the marauders, and see Mount Sinai and all of the miracles and wonders. And you had 40 years of kind of a lackadaisical period, so to speak. I know the wilderness years were probably not so lackadaisical, but we see this pattern start to reflect throughout the scriptures, and it seems to be tied to this premise that you're bringing out in that verse, which is, it seems to me like the period of lackadaisicalness, where judgment or retribution kind of tee up and end up being that the peg on the end of the bookshelf on both sides, is 40 years, a period of 40 years. And the reason now I'm looking at in modern times how that could be a significant number is, we had, for example, in like the 1940s, what did we have? We had World War II. We had a lot of terrible, things came out of that decade. 40 years after, 1940s, you had the 80s, you had the Vietnamese War, you had the Cold War. Interesting things with that period. 40 years after 1980 is what? Okay, so we don't have we're not, our generation is not the Viet, the vet Vietnam vets. We have
No,
what, we have now entered into a phase that seems to be kind of teeing up to something happening around this time period. And we're
exactly.
seeing world calamity. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, guys, is look at the biblical kind of cycle of 40 years and then look
Yeah,
at where we're landing in 2020 2021 is right around the time period that retribution for the previous time period of lackadaisicalness and lawlessness and sin kind of comes into judgment. And so two things very exciting, because I don't want to be all doom and gloom about all this kind of stuff. Oh look, what's on the horizon. Because people can do that, but they don't realize that uh, the patterns we see are these awesome, basically statements of, well, guess what else comes along with these patterns? The rising up of the judge, the people
correct.
that are protected and preserved, and miracles happen, and the amazing, beautiful, most high and led events start to happen. And so that's the first good news, is like, hey, it might
Hmm.
look terrible. Oh look, we're on the pattern. Look here, 40 years is up, right? Time to get judged. Look at how the world's going. Well, guess what? Coming along with that judgment comes some really good things. But also, on the other hand, on the second point is that um now's the time for this generation to learn to battle, and that's not just a physical battle, it's like a spiritual battle, I think.
Yep.
And so it's time for us to learn how to go through the hard times and to become the molded just like our ancestors were, because
Yep.
they're an example for us, is what the apostolic writings say. And um anyways, I was just
Actually,
excited about that
actually,
40-year pattern there.
and actually, Jake, it's not only for a year because in the verse 30 after Ehud, it says that the land has rest for 80 years. And now that you're talking about that, it's interesting because it's a multiple of 40. In this case, it's twice 40. But 80 years, and we think what's happening with the World War II and the time that happened, and we add the 80 years. We can say that we are in that time frame, that the land has been in rest somehow, and this is the time that the ruler will come, that shofet will come. But it means also we need to be prepared in order to be those kind of believers too. So I didn't pick attention to take attention on this one in the numbers and correlating with the history, modern history. But it could be that we should be prepared for that. For other reasons that's going on in my country. Yeah, just to mention, that it was a presidential election a month ago, a few weeks ago, and a very young guy was elected president of my country. He's a millennial. He's 35 years old. We are everybody is expecting what's going to happen because he's from the left as well. And sometimes some people believe that he's from the far left. So there's a lot of expectation what's going to happen in the transition of power starting on March. And due to that discussion, we were analyzing the situation. Is that, and I think I mentioned something here in Virtual House Church 2 weeks ago. Is that what we're missing is exactly what we are discussing in this portion. Is that those people and that generation that maybe today are the elders of our times. They have not been standing up with the strength we need in them. As you know, the scripture is all over the place talking about the elders in the gates. The elders that they have the wisdom, they knew because of the experience and the wisdom they have been receiving throughout the years what needs to be done. Especially, most importantly, they were following righteousness. And we were discussing this, that this is exactly what's happening and is missing. That generation to step up, to raise up, and to hit the table, to say so, to mention that, this is the way it needs to be done, to lead the people somehow in different aspects. And this is exactly what we see here. And when I was reading about the first judge, Othoniel, I was doing the math. He wasn't part of the first generation, okay? Because all that generation that crossed the Jordan died. We were reading about this in the portion last week. But Othoniel had the chance to fight side by side with Caleb, and we were reading about this one as well in the portion last week. But when we take a look, and let me see if I find it here. When we take a look in how this is written, let me put the scripture here in the screen. Is that is over here? Okay, so here is exactly what you were saying, Jake. So in the verse 11, it says that the land had rest for 40 years, then Othoniel's son Kenaz died. So let's assume that Othoniel lived 100 years. Joshua lived 110. So let's assume that he lived 100 years. And for 40 years, they had the land has rest. What it means that Othoniel, when he was raised up by Yahuwah in order to rule Israel, he was 60 years old. He wasn't a young guy. He was part of somehow in the previous generation. He had some kind of wisdom. He wasn't a youth, is what I want to say. And Yahuwah decided to take this guy, to raise up, to pour out the Spirit, his Ruach on him, in order to guide Israel into the right path. And by saying that, I don't want to say that we need to wait just for the older generation to take a stand in today's world. And when I said they take a stand in today's world, I want to focus only on the believers. I want to focus in the other aspect of society that we can perfectly apply it as well, now that we see everything that's going on. But applying only to the way of Yahuwah and seeing what's going on with the believers, I think that generation plays an important role into today's world, in today's worlds of believers. But not only that, because if we relied only on this, we are going to be relaxed. We are going to be waiting, not taking actions, and waiting for something to happen. And no matter that Yahuwah do things through people, do things according to his will, he does it through people. So if we're not willing to serve Yahuwah and we are waiting for somebody else to do it, and the older generations to do it, we are going to be, again, in the same attitude of waiting and not taking action. But anyways, I think even in that scenario, I think the older generation, they need to take somehow a stronger position in leading people. And I'm missing this and this step in the generational aspect, Jake. I think, and I mentioned this last week, that maybe we're not doing a great job in raising up the coming generations. And this is something that we need to take a look into at the light of the scripture to see what we have been doing wrong and what we need to change and what we need to do better in order to prepare the generations to serve Yahuwah, in order to prepare the generations to be prepared for the battles and to have the character of Mashiach in order to endure until the end. So, when I was taking a look on this, and you mentioned this as well, Jake, is that they were living among the other nations. They were living among different nations. And for me, this is exactly, as Yahushua said, that we are in the world, but we are not part of the world. And the perfect example we have for that, and what should be our attitude, is the attitude that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel had when they were in Babylon. They were in Babylon, but they were not part of Babylon. They were being pushed to follow their rules, and they were pushed to follow their worship, but they didn't do it. They follow the way of Yahuwah, no matter that most probably they were following part of the rules of the nation that were not in contradiction. to follow in the way of Yahuwah. But at the time that there was a contradiction, what was their attitude? Their attitude was a kind of an attitude of a ruler. They step up and they said, no, I'm going to follow Yahuwah till the end. I'm going to endure until the end. It doesn't matter what's going to happen to me. Yahuwah is strong enough and powerful enough in order to deliver me from whatever you want to do to me. And I think this is exactly the attitude and the character we need to have. And this is, the way that I see it now, connecting the dots of this portion, what we're going through today and what we're going to go through in the coming days, most probably, we need to see it somehow as a blessing. And it's difficult to see it, I have to recognize. It's difficult to see it as a blessing. But in the bottom line, we need to see it as a blessing, because what Yahuwah is doing is to try us, to understand what is in our heart, and not only to that, is to take the chisel and to model us to the character of Yahushua in order to help us to endure until the end. So, it takes more relevance to me when Yahuwah is saying, come out of here, my people, when he's calling us out of Babylon. Because, we are not going to get physically out of Babylon, of the system of Babylon. But we need to come out as much as we can from following their rules to following the way of life. We need to follow the way of life of the kingdom of Yahuwah with that right attitude. So, what else I had here, Jake? About Ehud, for me, it took a few interesting notes, because I see somehow two aspects here. It's a foreshadow or an example of endurance for us in what we see here in Ehud. But also I see a foreshadow of Mashiach. And for me, this is really interesting. And as you said, all of these rulers were coming from the different tribes. I saw a pattern that most of the stories and most of the aspects when they're talking about the rulers, there's a lot of reference to Ephraim and to the tribes of the house of Israel. And in the case of Deborah, there's many comments about Naphtali and Zebulun. Also, there are comments about the mountains of Ephraim. And for me, that was very interesting. But specifically, where I see it here is in the life of Ehud. So let me explain myself. Let me put the scripture here. So if we go to chapter 4. First, why I say that I see an example of endurance for us. It is written in the verse, let's see here. I don't have it in my note. Sorry, it's the chapter 3. Let me find for it. Here, in the verse 15, it says, and when the children of Israel cried out to Yahuwah, Yahuwah raised up a savior for them, Ehud, son of Gera, a Benjamite, a man impeded in his right hand. And by him, the children of Israel sent a present to Eglon, sovereign of Moab. So this guy, has a kind of impediment on his right hand. He was not able to use it. That's why he was left, and he was using his left, as you explained, Jake, and about the sword being in the right thigh. But, when I saw this, I immediately remembered what Yahushua said, and it's written in the book of Matthew, chapter 5. What is said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 30th, is the following. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away from you. For it is better for you that one of your members perish than for your entire body to be thrown into Gehinnom, into hell. So when I say that this Ehud is an example to us of endurance, I mentioned this taking in consideration this passage from Mashiach. This guy didn't have his right hand. He was unable to use it. The scripture is not clear about what was the impediment on his why he was not able to use the right hand. But even though that he was not able to use it, he endured until the end. He fulfilled the purpose that Yahuwah put in his heart. And he did it, he was the ruler, and he was saving Israel in this time. For me, This is exactly the attitude. What Yahushua is saying here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 30 is that if we see something happening in our lives that is departing us and taking us, turning us back and away from the way of Yahuwah, we need to cut it off. With what purpose? To endure until the end. So I think that's the right attitude we need to have. Everything is related to having the right character, the character of Yahushua in us, in order to endure until the end. This is endurance. For endurance, we need to have that attitude and that character. And when I'm saying that I see a foreshadow of Mashiach, and this is interesting to me, because just I have my notes here. First, he destroyed a king, like the other rulers, but he destroyed the king of the Moabites here. And it is written that he has also a two-edged sword. What is this? Is that, let me find it. Is, I don't find it now, but it is written that he had a two-edged sword. And we know that Yahushua
Verse 16, it says verse 16 there.
Here, you're right. Made himself a sword, it was double-edged and a cubit in length. So if we go to Revelation, thank you, Jake. If we go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 16, and we know this by heart, but let's read it anyways. It says, and in his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp two-edged sword. So again, we see a characteristics and a kind of foreshadow of Mashiach. Then we see, going back to Judges, this was also interesting to me. After all this situation with the king and so on, let's go here. It says that he went here, but while in the verse 26 and 27, but while they were delaying, Ehud escaped and had passed beyond the stone images and escaped to Seirah. And it came to be, when he arrived, that he blew the shofar in the mountains of Ephraim. And the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains, with him leading them. We know that Yahushua HaMashiach will send the messengers to blow the trumpets in order to announce his coming. And what the messengers are going to do, they're going to gather all of us from the four corners of the earth in order to meet Mashiach, in order to be gathered and go to the promised land, to Jerusalem. So again, it's an additional parallel and foreshadow of Mashiach. And it is said in the 27, and it came to be when he arrived, when Ehud arrived, I'm going to read it again, that he blew the shofar in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains, with him leading them. And he said to them, follow me, for Yahuwah has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. And they went down after him and took the fords of Jordan, leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to pass over. And they struck about 10,000 men of Moab at that time, all robust and brave men, and not a man escaped. And this is exactly what Yahushua will do. You know, it came to my mind immediately about the 144,000 that they were following Mashiach wherever he goes, and they were in the mountain together with Mashiach. And, you know, for me, it's impossible to see, Jake, and I don't know, you see something similar, that it's a foreshadow. And as you said, you know, the time is coming when the ruler will be raised up. The point is that it's not going to be a new ruler. It's that ruler that's coming. It's Yahushua HaMashiach. In the same way that the Hud was doing it, it's going to be Yahushua HaMashiach this time, destroying the enemies of Yahuwah and taking and giving rest to the people of Yahuwah. And, you know, when I say about Eglon, and we're discussing here as well, you know, he was a fat king. It's written in this way. And he was, you know, trying to understand secret. And that's the way that Ehud enticed him. I have something to tell you. And he was so interested that he wanted to hear about it. And this is exactly what we see going on in the current generation. You know, for me, fatness in this case is just to enjoy life. To enjoy life without control. This is exactly what we see happening in this generation. Not considering the consequences, not considering that we need to live in harmony with the creation. We need to live in harmony with the Creator. and they are just going ahead enjoying life in the way that the system of the world has been implemented, and especially in this today, just to try to understand and hear and listen secrets of the world instead of looking and seeking the secret of the truth of Yahuwah. So I see this dichotomy of the light and darkness, what it means to follow, to be a children of light, to follow the way of Yahuwah in the picture of Yehud, and being a children of darkness and follow the ways of the world in the skin of Moab. Any comments, Jake?
No.
Okay. So what else I have here? When I said that we need to take action, let me go here. Then this is part of the Son of Deborah. It's in the chapter 5, verse 15 and 17. So in the song Deborah, I started to mention the different tribes. Let's read it together. It says starting in the verse 14, and we're going to read until the 17. It says, out of Ephraim, their root is against Amalek. After you, Benjamin, with your peoples, out of Mahir, inscribers came down, and out of Zebulun, those who handled the scribes' reed. And the heads of Yisachar were with Deborah, and as Yisachar, so was Barak sent into the valley under his command. Among the divisions of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. And what it means there were a great searching of heart in my understanding is what is written in the verse 16. Why did you remain among the sheepfolds to hear the bleatings of the flocks? The divisions of Reuben have great searching of heart. When I read this, in comparison to what the other tribes did, is that the tribe of Reuben entered into a debate between themselves, is to go with Deborah and Barak or not, is to do something or not. And they were debating and searching their hearts, but by doing that and debating between themselves, if they were going to do something and to take actions or not, they remained in the sheepfolds. They did nothing. This is basically what I understand from this passage in the Son of Deborah. Let's continue. In the verse 17, it says, Gilad remained beyond the Jordan. And why did Dan remain on ships? Asher continued at the seashore and remained by its landing places. So the tribe of Dan remains on the ships. They didn't join the battle in order to take the people of Yahuwah back to the proper way. The same with Asher. They continued in the seashore. They did nothing. But the difference was with Zebulun and Naphtali. Zebulun is a people who risked their lives to the point of death. Naphtali also, on the heights of the field. For me, when I see this difference, is what I mean by taking action. We cannot be like in the Son of Deborah is saying, like Reuben, like Dan, like Asher. We need to be like Zebulun. We need to be like Naphtali. We need to take the actions in order to do the will of Yahuwah. So, last comments I have, Jake, it's about the story of Deborah, Barak, and Yael. Also, I have the closing comment about also in the song of Deborah that somehow is connected to Yael. Is that, for me, Yahuwah also always will do his will. He will find the ways to do his will. It could be with one person or with other person. And what I mean by that is that when we see this interaction between Deborah and Barak, Deborah, she was saying to Barak that Yahuwah has chosen you in order to save Israel. Go to the battle. And Barak was saying, come with me. If you come with me, I'm going to do it. So when I saw this, for me, this is a hard doubting. He has doubt in his heart. He was half believing, to say so. He knew the words and he believed in the words of Deborah, but because he was having this doubt, he wanted her to come with him. And what happened to that is that Yahuwah decided to take vengeance of this commander through somebody else because of the doubt in the heart of Barak in the way that I see it. So, what's the lesson for me and what I want to share is that when Yahuwah decides to do something, he will complete it. You know, if he said that he's going to do something, he will do it. He will do it through us. He will do it through somebody else. He will send the message out. He will make the action to happen. You know, I have seen this in my own life, Jake and brothers and sisters. You know, sometimes I have been receiving some truth from Yahuwah, some things that I have been able to see, and I haven't shared it on time, but somebody else later on is sharing it. And this is the way you know that we see Yahuwah is awakening us, his entire body, and he is, no matter who he's selecting, he's sending the message out in order to lead his people. So I think this is an important lesson connecting it to what we said at the beginning, Jake, is that we need to have the right attitude. We need to be able and willing to serve Yahuwah. And we need to have and remove any doubt from our hearts. And that's the more difficult part to do, because we always have doubt. And we were discussing here at home, Jake, in the story of Yael, how Yael knew what she needed to do about, in this case, killing Sisera. And just thinking, you know, putting ourselves in her shoes, you know, if that situation is happening to us, how we're going to be able to understand what's the will of Yahuwah. And I think that's the most important and also at the same time difficult aspect in the relationship all of us individually needs to create with Yahuwah. It's not easy, you know, to understand if when we are getting something, it's our own voice, our own understanding of is Yahuwah guiding us to do something. And, you know, I think what I have been learning throughout the years is when we get peace in our heart. That peace is because Yahuwah is asking us to do something. You know, in the book of First John is mentioned in this quite clearly. And also we were sharing also about the story of Eliyahu when he was running away from Isabel. And he was receiving this storm and the earthquake, but Yahuwah wasn't there. Yahuwah was on the still small voice, the quiet that wind. So, but you know, it's not this. It's something that we need to develop, and it's part of developing the character of following Yahuwah as a true believer. And you know what? In that whole story, what I found really interesting, Jake, is that why Yahuwah decided to put a woman to take vengeance and take the life of this commander. And, you know, for me, it was a wow moment when I saw it this morning, because for me, this is exactly what, when we see the prophecies in the book of Bereshit. It's a woman taking the life of and also crushing the head of Sisera, the commander, with a peg and with a hammer. So when we go to Bereshit and this is Genesis, chapter 3, we know that the curse of the woman and the curse of the snake here, let me find it, is here in the verse 14. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nahash, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go, and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, the seed of the woman, and you shall crush his heel. So, you know, when I saw this, the woman crushing the head of Sisera, you know, I immediately saw, you know, this is exactly what we see in this prophecy. You know, it's talking about the seed of the woman, but somehow the woman is also involved. And it's even more than that, you know. When I saw the woman, and this is looking at it in the opposite direction, taking basically a nail, because it was a nail that she took from the tent, and a hammer, and I immediately remember Mashiach, that he was, you know, nailed to that stake in his feet and also in his hands. So, you know, I don't fully understand the correlation, but for me, there is something here that is totally connected. A woman crushing the head of the enemy, and also crushing it in what way? In the same way that our head, Mashiach, was taken in the stake. And looking at it was, for me, really amazing, because it showed the importance of the role of the woman. And this is the closing point that I want to make, Jake, is about what Deborah said in the song about herself, and also about Jael, this woman, is that you know why Yahuwah decided to take a woman, the seed of a woman, and this is a secret, an important secret over there, because he was not able to do it through a man. A woman needs to be there in order to bring the salvation to the world. And that shows a lot of importance to our sisters about their role in the entire plan of Yahuwah for salvation. There's an important role of woman. I saw a video the other day of Walter White that we were checking, and he mentioned this, you know, Yahuwah decided to put women with the most important role in the universe, he said. And what's that role? Is in order to guide the kids and the coming generations in the righteousness of the kingdom of Yahuwah. And that, you know, is the most important role ever. And, you know, looking at it prophetically, and I would like to go in more details, maybe in a video or in a different study, about how Yahuwah and why Yahuwah decided to put the seed of the woman, why the seed of the woman was needed in order to bring salvation, because he was not able to do it through a man because of different curses. But what Deborah said in the chapter 5, in the verse 27, about this woman that crushed the head of the enemy. Let's go to the verse 27. Sorry, this is in Judges chapter 5, verse 27. Let's read it together. From the 24, it says, "Blessed above women is Jael, the wife of Heber the Canaanite." And also there is an important thing, because that there is a family relationship between Israel and them, because they were the descendant of the father-in-law of Moshe. And you know, my understanding is that there were Midianites, and Midianites were descendant of Abraham. So there is a connection there that somehow Yahuwah is using the same seed in order to bring restoration and salvation to his people. So it says, about women, in tents she is blessed. He asked for water, she gave milk. She brought out curdled milk in a bowl for nobles. She stretched her hand to the tent peg, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. Then she pounded Sisera. She smashed his head. She pierced and struck through the side of his head. And listen to this. Between her feet, he bowed. He fell. He lay still. Between her feet, he bowed. He fell. Where he bowed, there he fell, destroyed. So what I see here is that basically a woman crushing the head of the enemy, and somehow the enemy bowing down to this woman. And when I saw this, I immediately thought not only in Genesis, I thought in Revelations, chapter 12. We see the woman running away to the wilderness, and the enemy persecuting the seed of the woman. And in my understanding, who is that woman? Is a picture of Jerusalem. And when I see the enemy bowing down to this woman, you know, I took a few verses that I see this clearly and I want to share with you about the enemy or the nations bowing down to the woman that is Jerusalem. And let's go to two passages in the book of YaHuWaH, Isaiah. The first one is the chapter 49, and you can read it in context because it's a beautiful passage, but we are going to just read the verse 23. And it says the following. It's talking about, let's read the 22 and the 23. It says, "Thus said the Master Yahuwah, see, I lift my hand up to the nations and set up my banner for the peoples, and they shall bring your sons in their arms," the sons of the woman. If you read this in context, it's talking about Jerusalem. "And your daughters carried on their shoulders." And listen to this in the 23. "And sovereigns shall be your foster fathers, and their sovereignesses your nursing mothers. They bow down to you with their faces to the earth, and lick up the dust of your feet. And you shall know that I am Yahuwah. Those who wait for me shall not be ashamed." So we see the nations of the world that somehow it could be understand like the enemies of Yahuwah, that they are coming to this woman to bow down themselves. And we see something very similar in the chapter 60. And we are going to read it. You can read in context. The entire chapter 60 is a beautiful one as well. But let's read just the verse 14 to 16. It says the following. And the sons of those who afflicted you come bowing to you. And all of those who despise you shall bow themselves at the soles of your feet. And they shall call you city of Yahuwah, Zion, the set apart one of Israel. Instead of you being forsaken and hated, so that no one passes through you, I shall make you an everlasting excellence, a joy of many generations. And you shall suck the milk of the nations. And I didn't see this before, but what Jael did, she gave milk to Sisera. In this case, we see that this woman, Jerusalem, shall suck the milk of the nations. It's going to be the opposite direction, the other way around. And shall suckle the breast of sovereigns. And you shall know that I, Yahuwah, your Savior, and your Redeemer, am the mighty one of Yaakov. So, I think there is a lot of pictures and foreshadows here in this portion, Jake, in different aspects that we have been discussing. About what we are living today, about the generational change, about what needs to be our attitude, how to develop the character of Yahushua in order to endure until the end, how to be living in the world but not be part of the world. But also we see the foreshadows of Mashiach, and this is, a picture that he's coming and he's going to come again in order to destroy the enemies and to give peace to his people, but not only to his people, to the entire world. And we see this picture of this woman in my own eyes, my current understanding, as a foreshadow of Jerusalem if we connect the dots of the prophecies. That connected to, the prophecies in Genesis about the seed of the woman that is going to be the one crushing the head of the enemy. And if I want to go even beyond, could it be that maybe there is a connection with the 144,000 that are following Mashiach? That maybe those are the representation of the coming New Jerusalem that are going to be the one, somehow, a picture of what Jael did and the picture of what we saw in the prophecies of Isaiah. So that's what I have for today, Jake. I don't know, you want to comment on what I said, or you have last comments for the portion of today?
Yeah, that was a really great point there with the woman and the nail. I think the more we unpack these scriptures, the more beautiful parallels and interesting things that we can draw out of it like that. Yeah, it's just very interesting. Good Torah portion. But that's all the thoughts I have, I think, Juan.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jake. Like always, you're bringing so interesting topic. The whole study of this portion for me has been amazing, and I hope has been a blessing to all of you that are joining us today. I see 122 people connected to with us today. That's such a blessing. And for those of you that are watching this study offline, we really hope this is also blessing you. It's the time to study the word. It's the time, as we were discussing, to develop the character of Mashiach and to build up the fruit of the Spirit. That's the way that we are going to be able to learn the battle of Yahuwah, to learn how to endure until the end. So, Jake, thank you so much. And I hope to see you next week. I know that you are in times of expectancy. So just let me know you're going to be able to come next week.
Yeah, please pray for my wife Sierra. We're gonna have a baby any day now, so getting ready for that. So if I miss out on you guys, I apologize, but we'll be back as soon as possible. And if you guys haven't seen yet, just last week we released the audio dramatization of the book of Genesis. So if you guys are interested in something like that, I spent a couple months working on sound effects with Adam Fink, who I'd done music with. We collaborated and finished the Book of Genesis audio project, and that's on the Parable of the Vineyard channel and on my YouTube channel as well. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. It's similar to my Book of Enoch audio project that I worked on last year. Anyways, so that's pretty much all. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jake. So many prayers for you, your wife, and the coming baby. So we know that Yahuwah will be with you, that we will keep you all in our prayers. And for sure, we need to take a look in your work. It has been a blessing to all of us, so we will take a look. And like we always close Virtual House Church, first invite everybody to continue the fellowship in the Discord server. I know that our amazing moderators are always inviting everybody and posting the link. Many blessings to the moderators as well, that are doing a very difficult job sometimes. And they are helping us week by week. So if you want to continue the fellowship, please go to the Discord server and you can have continue discussing about this portion. And talking about your work, Jake, as we always do, we're going to finish this portion with the Aaronic blessing. So I hope this is going to be a blessing, this portion, to all of you. And see you next week in the new Virtual House Church in a new Shabbat. Thank you for joining us today. Yahuwah be with you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
יברכך יחוה וישמרך יאר יחוה פניו לך וחונקה יישא יחוה פניו לך לך שלום יישא יחוה פניו לך ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום ויעשה לך שלום. Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you gracious unto you, Yahuwah. Lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Yahuwah te bendiga y te guarde. Yahuwah haga resplandecer su rostro en ti y tenga de ti compasión. Yahuwah alce su rostro sobre